I had a strange but sure feeling that the man was still within a few miles of the cabin, somewhere in the forest, and something in me told me that he had something to do with that unnerving tree, with that hole. In my luggage, I had brought a small wildlife camera, the kind used to capture footage of animals in the wild from a remote distance. Looking back, my plan was risky and foolish. I was going to set up the camera in the bushes around the tree, so see if I could get some footage of that man. If I did, maybe I can convince the authorities to come out here and investigate whatever shit was going on the mountain. The camera automatically uploaded the footage to my laptop through some wonder of digital programming. It didn't need internet to function, so I didn't even need to retrieve it. I just had to get it out of there. In the utility cupboard of the cabin, I found a large axe, the kind used for chopping wood, as big as my leg. I wasn't sure whether it would be effective were I to be attacked, but it sure as hell made me feel more comfortable. Nervously, I stepped out into the snow, axe gripped tightly, and the camera in the pocket of my winter coat. My first few steps were tentative, expecting any moment to see that ghastly figure come rushing from the tree line. But the longer he didn't appear, the more confident I grew. I set off the way I had traveled the way before. Although my boot tracks had been covered up by a fresh layer of snow, I remembered pretty well the path I had taken to the tree. Once among the pines, my anxiety began to increase again. There were so many places for somebody to hide, but I reassured myself. I didn't care if he wanted to hide in a bush and watch me, as long as he didn't bloody show himself. In truth, if I had heard the slightest crack of a twig, let alone actually seen the man, I would have gone sprinting back to the cabin, abandoning the entire thing. I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when I actually reached the tree. Although the eerie air around it quickly dampened my spirits again, I positioned the camera in a fern well hidden, directly facing that awful hole. I turned it on and started recording. The battery life could last for 3 days straight. Glad to be done with it, I began to make my hasty way back through the forest, strides going faster and faster the closer I got back to safety. At first my brain didn't realize what it was that I could see out of the corner of my eye. My heart dropped, plummeting into the abyss as I identified that nightmarish face, peeking at me from behind a tree trunk, half hidden. He appeared to be trying to conceal himself, but I could tell from the spine-chilling smile on his face that he didn't really care if I saw him or not. I pretended not to notice, using all my strength to carry on walking at the same pace, to not scream and cry like a baby. I felt like a gazelle stalked by a lion. If I ran, he would chase. Another half kilometer in, and I heard no footsteps behind me. I let go of the breath I had been holding. Then, I caught him in my peripherals again, this time crouched behind a boulder. It seemed almost ridiculous, such a massive body trying to hide. It wasn't possible. There was no way he could have got ahead of me so fast without making a sound. Yet here he was. I could feel his haunting eyes tracking me, waiting with grotesque glee to see if I would react. I was overcome with horrifying despair. There was nobody to help me, nobody here to hear me scream, nobody to find my body. I reached the clearing without seeing him again. I knew that he was toying with me, taking a sickening delight out of my paralyzing terror. As soon as I had the cabin locked behind me, I sank to the floor, sobbing like a baby. Any bravery I had mustered before my mission to set up the camera had been entirely evaporated. Amidst the fear, I remember feeling blinding rage. How dare this twisted fuck do this to me? I spent the rest of the day packing, making sure everything was completely ready for a hasty departure the next morning. As night came, I drew the curtains and pushed bookshelves against the front and back door. I was able to drift into a feverish sleep, hand resting against the axe handle, plagued by horrific dreams about towering creatures with long black hair who smiled like little children. I almost wept from when I woke up in the morning, undisturbed. Before even getting dressed, I hurried downstairs to check the footage. I powered on my laptop, clicked stop recording remotely, and switched to the full screen to watch what had been filmed that night. I didn't know what I expected to see, but I knew that I would see something. The footage began with me positioning the camera, nervous, facing the center shot, then hurrying off screen. I fast-forwarded through the rest of the day. As night fell, the camera switched to night vision, casting the pines in an eerie green glow. I put the footage on 5 times speed, frantically scanning the scene for any signs of movement, but glancing especially often at the dark pit on the ground. There. No, wait. Go back a bit. There. A hand. I had to slow down the video to make sure I was truly seeing it. A hand. Emerging from the darkness below, gripping the edge of the hole. I braced myself for what I knew now would be a chilling ride. Another hand joining the first. Then a head coming up. A face I knew all too well. The man climbed out of the hole, seeming to pause and sniff the night air. Even though he was alone, I could still make out a trace of that half-asleep smile on his face. He raised himself up to his full freakish height. Then, disturbingly quickly, he bounded out of frame. Once again, I was forced to skip through the film. Once, in the background, amongst the clustered trees, I thought I saw something impossibly large moving slowly across the screen. But I passed it off as a corruption of the footage. With nothing much else happening, and the morning drawing close, I assumed that nothing else had been taped. I was just about to turn it off. I shrieked, jumping up from where I stood. The man's face had dropped down suddenly from above the screen, upside down. It occurred to me later that he must have been waiting right behind the camera. His grotesque visage filled the entire shot, smile wider than ever, otherworldly eyes pulling me in, suffocating me. I switched it off. My own face, reflected in the black screen so suddenly, made me jump again. I entered a cold kind of calmness then. I think my brain just shut off. It decided that it couldn't handle any more fear. I quietly got up. I got dressed, brought my suitcase outside, and got into the car. I put the key in the ignition, felt the engine start, began to roll forward, and the car came to a spluttering stop. I jumped out in anguish, swearing desperately, begging any god I could think of just to let me get away. The back 2 tires had been slashed, gouging cuts made by some sharp object. I wasn't about to lie down and accept my fate when I remembered the 2 spare tires I had brought. I swore from joy now, uttering obscene curses as I ran to roll the tires outside in a state of pure bliss. In 4 hours, hampered by the thick snowfall which had begun, I had the fresh tires on. By now, it was 6 o'clock in the evening. Night was beginning to slither over the sky, but I no longer cared. I would rather drive over the edge of a ravine than face what lurked in the forest. I drove like a madman, skidding on the icy ground as I pulled into the decrepit dirt path. I watched the cabin grow smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror, a sense of overwhelming relief washing over me. After half an hour of driving, the darkness had truly set in, and I kept scanning the road ahead, searching for any looming figures lit up by the headlights. I had the axe on the seat next to me, and the windows rolled up and locked. I felt as safe as it was possible for me to feel at the time inside the car. Wherever the man was, there was no way he could keep up with my life-threatening speeds, and soon I would be outside the range of distance he could realistically be within. Another half hour, and I knew that I could be seeing the first lights of civilization soon. Perhaps a small cottage or a cabin like mine. Maybe I could even reach that ski resort I had seen during the trip up. Just then, a gigantic shape tumbled from the trees to the left of me, too fast for me to react, slamming with lethal force into the side of the car. Everything flipped and began to spin, forming a nauseating spiral as I could feel myself floating upwards from my seat. Then a horrendous crack and everything went dark. I came to it at some point, still to total darkness. The lights in the car had gone completely out. My first focus was the intense pain in my head, but as that eased a little after a time, I took in my situation. I could see the rear view mirror below my head. The car was upside down. Snow was pulling in through the shattered windows, and there was a savage dent in the wide screen. I was hanging in the air, seatbelt acting as a harness. The axe was a few inches to the side of my jaw, blade completely buried in the seat. little to the right, and it would have been my face. Adrenaline surged through me as my body kicked into survival mode. I quickly loosened the seatbelt, carefully hoisting myself upright and then down. I patted myself, checking for any severe injury besides cuts and bruises. I was lucky. If I'd had a broken bone, I would almost certainly have died in that car, alone in the cold. Pretty quickly, my thoughts turned to the cause of my crash. I remembered a large blur coming hurtling out of the trees. Of course, my first thought was, it was him, but that didn't make any sense. The man was big, but there was no way he could push a moving car down a hill. I decided that what had caused the fall wasn't the number one priority. I had to get out of the forest, and fast. Alone without shelter or food, I had decided to leave my food at the cabin. I hadn't planned on needing it. I would probably perish within a few days. I pulled my road map out of the glove box, and using my compass, I was able to discern roughly which direction I needed to walk. I put my coat over the shards of glass on the ground and managed to crawl through the smashed window without injuring myself. I left everything except the sparsest essentials in the wreck, yes, even my trusty axe. My way was arduous and slow. I had to squint in the small light my wind-up torch provided, stopping to adjust the map every few minutes. I walked for what must have been hours, never once stopping. Eventually, as the cold and the fatigue set in, I gave up on checking my directions altogether, just walking. Walking, must keep on walking. A few times, I felt my eyelids begin to drift altogether. I had to jolt myself awake. To fall over to sit down would be fatal. I would never get back up at all. Suddenly, I heard a sound. It startled me more than I could put into words. Remember, I hadn't heard a single noise apart from those I created myself for a week. I was used to the absolute crushing silence of the Black Forest. To hear it disturbed me and told me that something was wrong. I whirled around, ears pricked, hairs on the back of my neck bristling. There it was again, the sound of leaves crunching under feet. Strangely, given what had happened to me, the man was not a great concern for me in that moment. This was because whenever I had encountered him, he had been totally silent. It would be odd for him to decide to make noise now. Still, I was still absolutely terrified. As the crunching footsteps continued, they sounded as if they were circling around me, and whatever was making them sounded big. I began to back up slowly, body almost paralyzed by fear. I've spoken of fear a lot in this story, and many of you will think you know what I mean, but you don't. You know the fear of seeing an unfamiliar shadow in the corner of your room, then realizing it's your coat rack. You know the fear of encountering a spider in the bathroom. You know the fear of being alone on the train with a stranger. You don't know the kind of fear which I felt in the Black Forest. You don't know total, enveloping, suffocating fear. You don't know fear which clings and melds into your skin like a plastic bag over your head. You don't know electric fear, fear which sets every nerve and sinew alight with agonizing tingles. You don't know fear which rots and festers in the pit of your stomach, drowning you from the inside out with caustic fumes of dread. You don't know fear which takes over your entire mind, letting you see nothing, hear nothing, taste nothing, smell nothing, feel nothing but pure terror. I took about 10 paces backwards, stopped sharply and abruptly as my back hit a tree. My eyes were still focused intently on the darkness in front of me, torch zigzagging over the shadows like a rabbit pursued by a hawk. Something in the back of my brain probably noted down that the tree felt unusually thin, but I was too preoccupied to really notice. What I did notice was when the tree moved. I slowly turned around to face it, somehow almost knowing that my very perception of the world was about to change. You see, for all our lives, we are taken up by human things, human life, human hopes, and human fears. Hopes about humans and fears about humans. Our mind hasn't evolved to know or care about the others, the twilight world, the things beyond our sight, things So terrible that they make our petty human worries look meaningless. I stared upwards, seeing something move high up in the canopy of pine branches. I saw a pale white circle began to emerge from the darkness. That face, that same awful, smiling face descended. I began to stumble backwards, tripping, dropping to the ground. I could only watch in horror. It, and he was most definitely an it now, began to take lazy steps forward, almost as if to show its form off to me. If it had been tall before, it absolutely dwarfed me now, but the growth was not proportionate across its whole body. From waist up, the man was the same, but his legs, its legs were about 40 feet long. It straightened up from where it had stooped to greet me, revealing its true height. From where I was laying, I had to crane my neck to even see its face. The legs stopped at its hips and ended at its feet, but the in-between looked like they had been stretched on a gigantic rack. They were elongated and spindly. As I watched, I saw tendons twist and convulse within the taut flesh. Whenever it took a step, it looked almost cartoonish in a nightmarish way, raising its knee up, swinging its arms in an exaggerated motion. I was choking, gasping for breath. It began to crouch down again, far too low, lower than its own knees. I could see and hear leg bones cracking and popping, snapping into place to accommodate the position. The legs bent at an unnatural angle in the middle, bending upwards, forming two arches on either side of its torso, like a spider, but with only two legs. I turned and vomited onto the snow next to me. With the transformation complete, the height difference was much smaller. We could look each other in the eyes. Now, I could see the creature in all its grotesque glory. What had once been its trousers hang in tatters around its legs. That greasy, long black hair acted like the mane of a wild beast now, the howling winter wind making it flow across its neck and lower back. The awful face was unchanged, some disturbing, dopey look, same hypnotizing eyes, but as I watched, the fixed Cheshire grin began to grow wider and wider, stretching far wider than a human mouth can stretch. The jaw didn't lower or drop down like a python. There seemed to be no adaptation at all to facilitate the stretching maw. Indeed, as I looked on, I saw the skin and muscle fiber of its cheeks start to rip and tear open, blood spattering the rest of its face in the icy ground. I imagined that from the side it must have looked like some hideous, mutilated version of Pac-Man. The jagged, shredded flaps of cheek gave way, allowing its chin to hit its jugular, revealing its tongue. Actually, I should say tongues. There were 4 or 5, all entwined and tangled together. The slimy appendages were long, like snakes, and they writhed, quivering and bristling, tasting my fear in the night air. One of the things which has stuck with me the most was the fact that its teeth were still rectangular, still human. It would be a truism at this point to describe my fear to you. I looked at the thing. The thing looked at me. It was panting, dribble flooding over its mangled lips and heaving chest. In its awful eyes, I could see an unmistakable excitement, an age-old thrill of the chase. And then it sounded its hunting horn. It shrieked. The sound was so loud that I had to cover my ears out of genuine pain. It was a warped, twisted, worse than animalistic cry. It sounded like a human scream of agony and the serrated squawk of a bird, all fading off into a rasping croak, then silence. I turned and ran as fast as I could, tripping, running straight through thorn thickets, bashing my head on low-hanging branches. I leapt straight over a small ledge, feeling my ankle twist below me as I continued sprinting. I didn't just ignore the pain. I genuinely didn't feel it. I had unlocked a part of me left over from the prehistoric days, a part designed to outrun true monsters. I pushed my body past what should have been possible. It was like I didn't need to breathe. Looking frantically over my shoulder, I saw it coming after me, head whipped back in the wind, almost as if it was laughing. The spider-like form it had morphed itself into gave it unnatural speed, allowing it to scuttle after me, torso leaning forward, horribly long fingers outstretched, ready to yank me up and devour me. I felt the earth shaking, thump, and the colossal shower of snow as it jumped. Another look back, and I saw it, feet positioned on two trees, 40 feet apart. It used those feet like hands, jumping and swinging from tree to tree, suspending its body in the middle. I put even more of my soul into running. I couldn't bear the thought of being snatched up from above. But a human body is, at the end of the day, human, and I could feel myself begin to slow, feel bile rising in my throat. I tripped more often and found it harder to rise each time. I felt revolting, putrid breath on my back, and in my mind's eye I could see those tongues wrapping around my throat. Suddenly, I leapt to the left, rolling downhill. The creature crashed headfirst into the pine in front of it, unable to stop in time. I was up in a flash, fresh energy from my new head start, but deep down I knew that it was still futile. Eventually, that abomination would catch me. I began to pray, not even to escape. I knew that was impossible. I just prayed that once the horror and the chewing and the pain was over, I could sleep. Then I saw the black shape in the distance. The moon lit a ring around it, almost guiding me, showing me the way. I didn't let myself hope, didn't want to have it cruelly ripped away, but it was unmistakable. A car, a driver's side door open. I drove inside, slamming the door shut. Could it be? Yes! Somehow against all odds, the key was in the ignition. I spared a quick thought of solace for the original owner, who, by most likely meeting his horrific end, had spared me from the same. I rammed the vehicle forward with aggressive force. Just as the creature's massive figure crashed down behind me, I span in frantic circles around the slippery ground, finally able to get control and burst forward. I couldn't put the car into top speed. There were too many tree trunks to navigate, but I drove as fast as I could, swerving to avoid the obstacles which came zooming out of the darkness. Looking in the rearview mirror, I could see that the thing had raised itself up to standing again, impossibly long strides, keeping worrying pace with the car. My heart soared as I reached a bumpy dirt road, letting myself think for the first time that I might just get out alive. On the relatively even ground, I switched to full speed and was thrown back into my seat by the sudden burst of momentum. The creature, still walking in the upright position to the rear of me, began to be left behind. Yet it never began to run, always walked, almost leisurely, as if it had all the time in the world, that horrible, exaggerated stride, like a distorted cartoon character. Its shadow stretched across the road behind me, framed by moonlight, elongated and slender. The shadow looked like a man on stilts. Those nightmarish 40-foot legs began to fade away into the darkness, and the last thing I saw in the rearview mirror was that awful, predatory gaze, those dizzying eyes, that chilling, too wide smile, still grinning as if wishing me goodbye. I reached Gutak in the early hours of the morning. As the first rays of sun yawned across the sky, I stopped only to eat, ignoring the questions of the locals, wolfing down the meal they kindly made me. Then I was back on my way, speeding dangerously, not caring, eager to never see another pine tree again. In Baden-Baden, I abandoned the car that had saved me. I couldn't keep driving the car of a missing person, a theory confirmed by the crusted crimson spatters on the dashboard I had noticed after closer inspection. I often still think about that poor soul, who they were, how they ended up in the wretched forest. Almost in a daze, I booked myself a flight back to Munich, declining the calls from the newspaper when they learned about my early return home. I chose not to take my evidence to the police, partly because I knew they would not believe me, partly because I wanted to spare them the horror if they did. When I got back to Munich, nothing was the same. I quit my job. I didn't tell anyone what happened to me. I got a friend to translate that writing I found on the tree. It reads, "The flesh weaver comes. You cannot outrun him. The great shadow is coming. He will make you beg for death." I also researched that symbol, the three interlocking triangles. It is a Volknut. an ancient Germanic pagan symbol representing the realm of the dead. It's been a month. I don't go outside anymore. My apartment is a mess. I barely eat. I never sleep. Every night, I have the same dream. In it, I see the creature on a nondescript road in a nondescript place, still walking, always walking, coming after me. Eventually, it's so close that all I could see is its shimmering eyes and its jagged smile. Whenever I awake, I feel as though it's still out there somewhere, walking, searching, not stopping until it finds me. Don't ever go to the Black Forest. You're probably wondering why exactly I'm telling you this, and I wouldn't be, but for the past 2 nights, I've been finding handprints at my windows, hearing knocks on the glass, seeing a pale face outside in the corner of my eye that is gone when I look over at it. I would just dismiss this as something harmless, like neighborhood kids playing pranks or stalker or even a home invader, if it weren't for the fact that my apartment is about 40 feet off the ground.